The main reasons of this conflict in Ukraine was to weaken Russia, particularly weaken Vladimir Putin. Considering what has happened in Russia recently, the presidential election in Russia, has the West achieved its goal in Russia?
Not even close. In fact, it's the opposite. Everything about what the West has done in regards to Ukraine has strengthened Russia, strengthened Russia as a nation, and strengthened Vladimir Putin as the Russian leader. Um, Putin was always going to win this election. It didn't matter who they put. There's these fantasy that if Alexei Navalny had run against Putin, or if Boris Nemtsov hadn't been killed, Nemtsov would never have gotten more than 7% of the vote, and Navalny would never have gotten more than 2% of the vote. These aren't viable opponents. There is no viable opponent to Vladimir Putin. He's just a good leader. He has done great things as a Russian leader. So why wouldn't the Russian people reelect him to office? But it wasn't just about Putin. It was also a vote in confidence of the Russian nation, the state of the nation, so to speak, and the future of the nation. In 2020, the United States held a presidential election that captured the attention of many Americans, and record numbers of voters went out there. They said that Donald Trump got the second largest number of votes for president in the history of the United States. The only person to beat him was Joe Biden, who got a few million more votes. And so you're like, wow, that means that the American people are engaged in everything. 66% of the population of the eligible voters participated in that. 77% of Russia's eligible voters participated. Now, if it was just, oh, Putin, we have no other choice. Oh, it's a dictatorship. Oh, the oligarchs and the autocrats will decide who's going to lead. We're not we the people have no say. You would have had under 50% of the population show up for the vote. 77% of the Russian eligible electorate showed up to vote, which means that the Russian people said, we believe in this. This is what we believe in. And one of the reasons why they believe in it is, of course, because of the success of the last quarter century that they've been led by Vladimir Putin out of the abyss of the 1990s, but also that because of this Ukraine conflict, last summer, Russia passed a new foreign policy that was predicated on the notion that Russia was a great civilization on par with any other civilization in the world. Prior to that, the Russian people had been prone to saying, oh, we're an inferior nation, inferior to the West. And that's why all these, Navalny types were looking to the West, because they lacked confidence in who they were as Russians. Today, the Russians are very confident in who they are and very comfortable with who they are. They like who they are. And so you have this new foreign policy that is predicated on Russia is a civilization on par with all the great civilizations of the world, and that this great civilization will never subordinate its interests to any other nation or group of nations. There will be no more kneeling before the West. Russia will stand in front of the West. This is the Russia that the Russian people believe in, and this is the Russia that the Russian people went out and voted for. It wasn't just a vote for Putin. It was a vote for Russia. They were participating in a process that they firmly believed would lead them down a better path, or continue down this good path. And it's an absolute failure of policy on the part of the United States and the West, because not only has what they've done backfired, but it's strengthened Russia.
I talked with Paul Carrick-Roberts. He was criticizing Putin's attitude toward this war since this war started. He said he's so patient. He's letting everything to escalate. If they send these Taurus missiles to Ukraine and they hit the Kerch Bridge, they hit Crimea, what would be the reactions on the part of Russians? Are they going to sit in back and be patient and just going along with this escalation?
Let's put it this way. With all due respect to Mr. Roberts, he doesn't know anything about the military. He doesn't know anything about war. Nothing. I would like to remind him that Russia's winning this war. Does he want Russia to lose this war? Because he's basically criticizing a winning policy posture. He wants Russia to lose this war, because if Russia, I'd like to introduce him to the concept called the OODA loop. It's derived from John Boyd, an American fighter pilot. The Marine Corps adopted it in the 1980s to get us focused on maneuver warfare, how to maximize your potential. And you do this through the OODA loop, which is observe, orient, observe, decide, act. Basically, you orient yourself on the problem, you observe it. From that observation, you make a decision to act. You know, and then you start all over again. Once you act, you see how the enemy reacts, observe, reorient, make a decision, and then do it. And then the enemy has to react to you. If you get inside the enemy's decision-making cycle, you're in control. And so for Mr. Roberts, who has no knowledge of this, or at least he has no concept of how it's applied, he wants Russia to let NATO and Ukraine initiate the OODA loop so that Russia's reacting to them. And once you start reacting, they're inside your decision-making loop and they're going to beat you. Russia isn't playing that game. Russia is in charge. Everybody's reacting to Russia. Russia's not reacting to them. And that's why Russia's winning. You know, hitting the Kerch Bridge. Would it be the first time the Kerch Bridge was blown up? Nope. Be the third time. What did Russia do the other two times? Throw a temper tantrum? React? Overreact? No. Patience. Because Russia has a strategic vision. Russia has a game plan. Russia's winning. Russia's winning. Russia's winning. For all the people that criticize the patience of Putin, you're just proving how stupid you are, how ignorant you are, and you have no idea of why and how Russia is winning this war. You think you could do it better, but you can't. Russia's winning this war because of it's not the patience of Putin. It's because Putin has confidence in the strategic vision and how they're implementing it. And he's not going to let Ukraine and NATO get him to deviate from that. And how do you deviate from that? By doing what they want you to do, by overreacting to a provocation.
Jake Sullivan is trying to convince Ukrainians that Russia's objective was to wipe Ukraine off the map. Russia has already failed in all its objectives. And the other objective, in his opinion, was to crush the democratically elected president of Ukraine. How much of these things that Jake Sullivan is putting out were the Russian objectives since this conflict started?
Well, we know for a fact that, Jake Sullivan's wrong, because the Istanbul communique, which represents the negotiations that took place between Ukraine and Russia in the immediate aftermath of the initiation of the special military operation, proves that Russia's goals were not territorial acquisition. Russia, of course, would keep Crimea, but Russia, reconquered or reabsorbed Crimea in 2014. It wasn't part of this current conflict. Russia also said that the Donbass would be the independent status of the Donbass would be recognized pending some sort of referendum that would decide which way the Donbass went, but it wasn't about automatically absorbing it. And we know, the Minsk Accords from 2014 to 2022, the Donbass had wanted to be absorbed by Russia, but Russia wouldn't because they respected the territorial integrity of Ukraine. And the Istanbul communique reflects this respect. Zaporizhia and Kherson would have gone back to Ukraine. All the territories that Russia had occupied around Kiev, Sumy, etc., were going to be returned to Ukraine. So Jake Sullivan is just lying. The only reason why Russia went down the path that led it to the absorption of Novorossiya, the 4 new territories, is because the West rejected the Istanbul communique, and the Ukrainian government doubled down on continuing their policy of cultural and ethnic genocide against the ethnic Russians of Ukraine. And so Vladimir Putin, a Russian leader who in 2005 told the Russian Federal Assembly that, he is the leader of the Russian nation, not just the Russian Federation, the Russian nation. And the Russian nation is comprised of people that have, the same history, the same culture, the same language, the same religion, shared values. And the ethnic Russians of Ukraine are part of the Russian nation. And now the Ukrainian government, with the backing of the West, said we're going to allow the cultural genocide to take place, the erasing of their Russian identity. And so Putin stepped in and he's absorbed those territories as part of his plan of protecting them. And I can guarantee you that if this war continues, he will likely absorb more territories, not because that was the initial Russian objective. Jake Sullivan knows that that's a lie. He knows what the Russians wanted. But it's because it's required, as long as you have this insane, ultra-nationalist driven Ukrainian government sustaining policies of ethnic genocide, cultural genocide of Russians. So, Sullivan's wrong on that. So it wasn't about territorial acquisition, the destruction of Ukraine. Look, the Russians were going to let Ukraine live intact. Not now. It's over. There will be no Ukrainian state when this is finished, and that's because of Jake Sullivan. Jake Sullivan is to blame. Joe Biden is to blame. Emmanuel Macron is to blame. Schultz is to blame. Anybody who talked about giving Ukraine extended range ammunition is to blame, because Russia has said right now, Putin said it the other day, we will have to build buffer zones. And the buffer zones are designed by the maximum range of Ukraine's best long range systems. And they will draw a line that ensures that those weapons, if fired from Ukrainian soil, can't hit Russian soil. And you've pretty much taken all of Ukraine off the map now because of the weapons we've provided Ukraine. We're providing them weapons to save them. No, you provided the weapons that guarantee there will be no Ukraine when this is done. And that's the reality. Jake Sullivan is just spinning this. Again, it's like the captain of the Titanic trying to come up with an excuse about how that iceberg got there and tore a hole in the ship. It's because you're a bad captain. You made a number of bad decisions, but now he's going to blame, global warming, or he's going to blame a school of dolphins who influence the flow. He's going to blame something that's nonsensical instead of taking responsibility for his own actions.
There is a speed bump on the front. There is a speed bump on the front.